we'll move to the next topic, that is new towns in India. Small topic, but important. If you have a question, then please put it in chat. That way only I can know whether we have a question or not. So, yeah, Ashit asks, what is this political thing that we're talking about? Villages. So, what was the viewpoint about villages? What kind of, see, what is politics first of all? Politics means who has power, how is power distributed, how can you acquire power? All these things are part of politics. Politics is nothing but the way by which you acquire power. So, who holds power, how they hold power, right? Who are indifferent to all these things? Politics decides that. So, what is the predominant view about the nature of distribution of power? What was the Britishers' view when it comes to distribution of power? So, Britishers were of the view that the villages, they were little republics. They themselves decided everything on their own. So, within their region, they were all powerful. The kings did not have any role to play. Right, let's say you have the Mughals, they would have the capital somewhere in northern parts of India. The villages were governing themselves, they were regulating themselves, they were ruling over themselves, and the Mughals will not have a massive amount of, they will have a say, but what is happening in the village, they cannot control that. So, they don't have power over the day-to-day activities. That's what they are saying. But, and again, other way around also, the villages also did not have a say on the rulers, or who is ruling. Who is ruling, what kind of policies that person is coming up with, the villages do not have any say on that. So this is what was the predominant view of the British colonial administrators. But what is happening? What did the Indians? What are the findings of some of these village studies? They find out that that is not the case. The villages were having some amount of say. The villages were actually concerned who is ruling. They might not necessarily change who is ruling over there, but they might influence the policies of those who are ruling somewhere else, right? From somewhere else, from the capital. The villages expected that basic infrastructure should be provided to them. And what were the options that the villages had? They can migrate out to some other place. They can support a rival king. So all the options were there. So certain kinds of role the king used to perform, infrastructure dispute resolution, all those things, which helped the villages. And generally, in the base, for the day-to-day things, it is the dominant caste within the villages who were taking the who were playing the role, right? Who had the power for that. So this is the meaning of this. Harish has a question: why poll questions are not conducted? See again, poll questions they will be objective questions. Sociology, you're not going to get any objective question. It's mains examination. Mains does not have any objective questions. So we are not studying for prelims in case. Yeah. Vani Singh says, ask what are some constraints people face in villages? Bunch of literature is there, and what constraints people face in villages and village studies is slightly different. See, village studies are those studies which are commissioned to understand villages, right? And again, they're not recent studies. They're all maybe 50, 60s at that point of time. Multiple studies are there. The villages at present, whatever issues they face, will be slightly different from what it is being pointed out here, because over a period of time, things would have also changed. But yeah, I mean, just think of villages in India. Look at different socioeconomic indicators, right? Compare urban areas and rural areas. Infant mortality rate, fertility rates, life expectancy, literacy rate, right? School dropout rates. You'll find massive variations in both urban and rural areas. What is the reason? And rural areas basically they are the villages. You'll find, or if these numbers are not good in rural areas, these are the issues that people face. People don't have access to healthcare facility. People don't have access to education facility. As compared to urban areas, by the way, people don't have access to finances, banking facilities will not be there, toilet facilities, sanitation facilities. All these are different kinds of issues people face in rural areas. But it's not that people in urban areas don't face this. The thing is, in rural areas, all these things will be even more aggravated. Handouts, Harika, we are already giving, no? Muskan says, can we say at present rural lifestyle is also moving towards urban lifestyle in terms of their thinking? Yeah, I mean, there will always be this thing, right? Rural areas only become urban areas after some point of time. People from rural areas go to urban areas, right? So gradually over a period of time, yes, rural people will also be having similar kind of mindset. That is how transition happens. But yeah, the question is how quickly it is happening. We might not be having a very quick transition of that. Why? Now also, right, India lives in the villages, in the sense that 70% of the population is still in the rural areas. If you look at census 2011 data, somewhere around 69% of India is in the villages. Just 31% of India is urbanized, right? So that transition from rural to urban is not happening at a very fast pace. Globally, 54% of the population stays in urban areas. In India, just 31% as per 2011 census. Maybe the number has increased now, maybe it is 35%. So in India, maybe 35% people are staying in urban areas. Globally, 54% are staying in urban areas. So the transition from rural to urban is not happening as fast as other parts of the world. So this was Muskan's question. Yeah, so let's move to the next topic. In case you have more questions, you can put it in the chat, we can take it up at the end. The next topic is the changing face of new towns in India. Now, small topic. The idea here is, see, we talk about urbanization, and urbanization can happen in multiple ways. In fact, just now when I was answering Muskan's question, I was talking about urbanization. Right? So good that Muskan's question is helping us transition to the topic, which is again, which was the next topic. So urbanization happens through multiple ways. One is the rural areas becoming urban areas. Another thing is urban areas becoming larger in size, right? They're expanding. So more number of people will now become part of that city or town. Sometimes what happens, one region will be there, right? Maybe it is predominantly agrarian, but over a period of time, gradually, right, the region becomes slightly different, right? Maybe different kinds of industries are coming up, services, people are getting employed in services. So that will also become urban over a period of time. Now, another way urbanization can happen is by setting up towns from scratch, by setting up new towns, greenfield towns. So a rural area, but let's say the government came up with a policy that we will set up steel plants in different parts of the country. We'll set up one public sector entity, Steel Authority of India Limited. Under that, we will set up steel plants in different parts so that the country's steel requirements can be met. So one place in Western Orissa, right now it is completely rural, nothing is there. Let's set up a steel plant, root-class steel plant. In present Jharkhand, right? One place, let's set up a steel plant, Bokaro steel plant. Another place in Chhattisgarh, Bhilai steel plant. So when these setups are created, what will happen? Over a period of time, you'll have people working here, different kind of amenities will come up, and they will all become towns, cities. So from scratch, you have created this. Right? And again, immediately this happens. These are called greenfield new towns. Another example, let's say there's a state. Now it decides, okay, we need to create a new capital. Right now, whichever capital is there, a lot of crowd, it's extremely crowded, congestion is there, people's standard of living is getting impacted. Why not shift the capital to some other place? So that place will be the administrative capital, and the present capital, already there are so many economic activities there. Let it be a commercial hub. This will be a commercial hub, and the administrative capital will be something else. So that again, if you're starting it from scratch, it is a greenfield new town. Another way it can happen. Let's say there are 10 districts in a state. Now, the state decides, okay, let's increase the number of districts, carve out more districts maybe. And if you're carving out more districts, you have to create new district headquarters as well. And these new district headquarters, you have set up new district headquarters, can lead to greenfield new towns. So new towns refers to this. Greenfield new towns refers to this. You are starting a town from scratch. So what is the, why do you need to do this? What all you have to keep in mind? What are some of the difficulties that you might face? What are some of the factors that you have to take into consideration? So first of all, what is the whole point behind setting these greenfield new towns? Cities, towns, they contribute massively to economic development. In case of India, 31% of the population stay in urban areas. That's as per 2011 census. But from this 31%, 63% or 64% of the GDP comes. So small part of the population contributing large part to the economy. Rural areas, agrarian areas, 70% of the population stay in the rural areas. But look at the contribution to the economy, very less. So one of the things that if you want to create more jobs, one of the things that you can do is set up new towns. If you want to increase economic activity, if you want to increase the size of the economy, maybe set up more towns. One of the options, it's not the only option. But to do this, what all factors you have to take into consideration? So there was this EPW article which talked about new towns, right? Maybe this approach is something that can be taken up in future. In fact, in the last few years, some of the states are considering this, right? Having 3 capitals or those kind of things. So what all factors are required? Multiple types of planning are required. Physical planning. You have to decide how large should the city be. You have to decide how do you distribute the land use. You have to decide the land use mix. I'll just explain one by one. You have to decide the form of land use distribution. How much of the land should be private land? How much of the land should the government hold? How will the land be used? Whether what portion of this land will become residential buildings, what portion of the land will become commercial centers, what portion of the land will become schools, academic institutions, etc. So you have to decide on all these things. Second is you have to also do environmental planning. Right? You have to ensure that the nature is protected. You have to ensure that the environment is not degraded. Health, well-being of the individuals have to be taken into consideration. You have to also take into consideration social planning. Right? There might be some people over there, right? How they are taken care of. There might be a requirement of displacement of some people. You have to take care of that. Right? So you have to ensure all these things. You have to also think about the utilities. How will you provide electricity? How will you provide water? And nowadays internet and other things, right? So utilities also have to be thought about, right? Who will be providing all these things? How will you set it up? Operations. How are you going ahead with all these things? How will you ensure governance, transparency, accountability? So if you are setting up new towns, all these factors have to be taken into consideration. What is the impact of new cities? I've already talked about it. Cities contribute massively to the economy. At this point of time, 31% of India, the towns and cities constitute 31% of the population, contribute 60% of the GDP. And urban areas in India are expected to increase over a period of time. World over, 54% of the population stays in urban areas. So India's extent of urbanization is low. We need to accelerate it further. Now, in this entire process, if you are having more new cities, what will be the advantage, right? Apart from the larger numbers, the GDP grows, the contribution to the GDP increases. What else can be the advantage, right? If you are having new towns, the quality of life can be better. You're starting everything from scratch, right? You can plan things better. Quality of life can be better. Right? You decide the land use, land mix use, and all those things, right? So you can take into consideration all these factors: health facilities, utilities, right? Continuous power supply, water supply, garbage, how the garbage will be managed, how the traffic will be managed. You might have proper layouts. Now, just think about it. Some of the opposite of this is old places, right? Old places are opposite of new towns. Think of what kind of quality of life is there in some of the old places in India. Many cities in India will have some pockets which are very old, right? Usually in these old areas, you'll have very narrow lanes, right? The electric wires, power lines, and all those things are hanging from here to there. The buildings are in a dilapidated state. So the quality of life is not as good. But if you're starting something from scratch, you can take all these issues into consideration and plan properly, right? So planning, designing can be better. And maybe you'll have more efficient use of resources. That means the output that you are getting and the amount of inputs that is going into it might be better. So you are planning everything properly, right? So maybe you are allocating resources across sectors so that all these things are more cost effective. Right? You're not bound by different kind of constraints. I'll give you an example. If there is already a city, if you want to improve the transport over there, maybe you will think of different kind of facilities, for example, metro network and all those things. But it becomes very expensive because land acquisition and all those things are very expensive. Because already there are people saying they have to be given a lot of money so that they allow for the usage of their land for these purposes. But if you're starting things from scratch, all these constraints are not there. So the resources that has to be spent will be comparatively less. Right? You'll get better bang for the buck. So these can be some advantages, but it's not that everything is rosy. There can be different challenges also, right? So you need to have money. Most important thing to set up cities, and money can come from two sources mostly. One is from the government, and other is from the private sector. Now, when it comes to private sector, getting money for these kind of projects might be difficult. Why? See, in cities, maybe the private sectors have some incentives to invest. Already everything exists, the right kind of infrastructure. Basic infrastructure will be there in most of our cities. So if I'm, let's say, a private player, and if I have to decide whether I want to invest in Bangalore or I have to invest in some rural areas, I'll think twice before investing in rural areas. Because basic things, airport connectivity or railway connectivity, road connectivity might not be there, port connectivity might not be there. But in a place like Bangalore, at least some of these basic infrastructures are already set. Power supply, water supply. Yeah, I mean, in Bangalore also you have multiple issues, but you have all these things already. In the new place, all these things have to be set up. So some of these private investments might not come as easily. Right? Those kind of issues will be there. They find it very difficult to attract that. And sometimes land acquisition and rehabilitation, all these challenges can be there. So for example, this place is a rural area, but there will be some people who are staying in rural area. Now you're taking up their land to set up different projects maybe. So you have to rehabilitate them. You're basically displacing them. And India has not had very good record when it comes to rehabilitation, displacement rehabilitation. Right? So somewhere we have to have the right kind of policies here also. So these challenges can be there. So this is about new towns, greenfield towns. Part of urbanization and industrialization. There is one section in our syllabus which talks about urbanization and industrialization. So these are about new towns. One of the things which is being discussed nowadays, and how they can help. What needs to be done to enable these towns? What can be the positives and what can be the challenges? One question: what do you mean by greenfield cities? Examine their relevance in urban development in India and enlist challenges. It is something which we already discussed. And again, if you have questions from topics like this kind of direct questions will be there. So this is about greenfield towns. Yeah. Now let's move to the next topic. A very important topic: Sanskritization. So mobility and sensitization. So what is this? Why we are discussing this? So this is linked with multiple parts of our syllabus. So in paper 1, you have, I think it is the 6th chapter, right? The 6th chapter is all about social stratification. So how different societies will have some hierarchy. Hierarchy can be in terms of wealth, it can be in terms of status, it can be in terms of power, right? So some people are having more wealth, some people are having less wealth, right? Some people are having more power, some are having intermediate levels of power, and some are completely powerless. Status also, prestige, it also varies. So social stratification means that. But there are ways by which people change their position in this hierarchy. They might be born at some place in the hierarchy, but individuals try to improve their position in terms of this hierarchy. If they're able to change it, it shows that the society is providing for mobility. Changing one's position or group's position along that hierarchy is called mobility. So that is the meaning of mobility. Sanskritization is one of those ways by which people were able to change their position on the ritual hierarchy. Sanskritization is one of the ways by which people were able to, groups, they were able to change their position in the caste hierarchy. How did this happen? What are the features of Sanskritization? What are the different views on Sanskritization? How different thinkers vary? The viewpoints vary. All these things we are going to take up one by one. So let's get started. This is something which is linked with paper 1, social stratification and mobility. This is also linked with M.N. Srinivas, which is Sociology paper 2, right? Different thinkers we study, right? Ghure, Desai and M.N. Srinivas. So M.N. Srinivas, it is linked with that. Then in paper 2, you have also a topic on caste system. It is linked with that as well, right? And again, class and all those things are there. To some extent, it is linked with that also. Sanskritization has been asked many times. Sometimes you will have also get short notes, and sometimes you might be asked long answer questions on Sanskritization. So first of all, what is social mobility? I've already explained it, but I'll just repeat what Sorokin says. Shift of social position may be undertaken by an individual or a social object or value, right? So that is social mobility. Shift in social position. I'll give you an example. Let's say this is society. One way by which hierarchy can be there is wealth. People here are rich, people here are poor, right? Maybe someone is born here, but maybe this person is talented, maybe this person is hardworking, and also this person is lucky maybe. As a result of which, the person becomes rich, right? Over a period of time is able to have massive amount of wealth, right? Because of his hard work is paid by the markets, and this person moves up. This person has changed his or her social position. In the past, the social position was low, now the social position is high. Look at all these athletes that we have in the Indian cricket team, or the different sports team that we have, right? Some of the athletes in different sports team nowadays, they might have been born in poor socioeconomic background, but because of their hard work and because these sports are now being recognized, they have a market, there's a demand. So if they're doing well, they're rewarded, right? And they will have sponsorship if they're getting, let's say, an Olympic gold. After that, they will get different kind of sponsorship deals and other things, right? So they become wealthy. Maybe they were born in a very modest background. Maybe their class position was low, their social position was low, but because of their hard work and talent, now they're wealthy. So they will move up the social hierarchy. This is called social mobility, right? So this is the meaning of social mobility. So along the lines of power, along the lines of prestige, along the lines of wealth, there can be changes, and it leads to change in one's social position. So this is the meaning of social mobility as per Sorokin. Now, what is Sanskritization? So let's look at the formal definition. A process by which someone from a low Hindu caste, again, in the Hindu caste system, certain castes were considered to be high caste, certain castes were considered to be low caste. There was this hierarchy. Caste system we have already studied. Sanskritization is a process by which a low Hindu caste or a tribal or other group changes its customs, rituals, ideology, way of life in the direction of a high, frequently twice born caste, Dvija caste, right? Brahmin, Kshatriya, they're all called Dvija caste, twice born caste. This process is called Sanskritization. So someone who has been accorded a low caste status, for each caste, there will be certain rituals, certain kind of practices, certain ideology will be there, certain values will be there. So the members who are born in the so-called low caste, they leave all these kind of practices that they were expected to follow because they were a member of the caste. Instead, what they're doing, they're following the rituals, the customs, the ideology associated with a higher caste. So they were accorded, this is the caste they were born into. They're leaving the practices related to this caste. They are following the practices related to this caste. That is called Sanskritization. And over a period of time, they will also claim a higher position in the caste hierarchy. They will make this claim that we are not from this caste, we should be given this position, we should be accorded some higher position. Right? So they make this claim. This process is called Sanskritization, and M.N. Srinivas talked about this. So in his study of religion society in Kursk, he came up with this concept of Sanskritization. Now, let's try to summarize what he is talking about. Now, there are different perspectives related to caste. Right? One perspective is caste is something which does not change. If you are born in a particular caste group, you are accorded a particular social position, and that social position will not change. This was one of the dominant view. Right? Caste is something that you get at the time of your birth. There cannot be any change in your caste position. There cannot be change in your social position. But M.N. Srinivas is actually different here when he's talking about Sanskritization. He's saying that caste is not as rigid as it sounds to be. It's far from a rigid system. He's disagreeing with the fact that caste system doesn't change. He's disagreeing with the fact that one's position in the caste hierarchy cannot change. One's position in the caste hierarchy can change. That's what Srinivas says. He's saying that social mobility has always been possible, especially among those castes which are in the middle. Those who are in the middle caste, right? They were able to change their caste positions. A low caste was able to change his position in the social hierarchy, but it used to take 1 or 2 generations. It will not happen overnight. It's not that today I leave my practices and from tomorrow I'll start your practices, some other caste practices. So day after tomorrow my caste position will change. It is not the case. It takes generations to move up the social hierarchy. So this is what M.N. Srinivas says. Right? This is his viewpoint. So how it is different? How it is relevant? Previously it was thought that caste system is rigid. He's saying caste system is not rigid. Caste system can be changed. One's position in the social hierarchy can be changed. How it can be changed? By following the rituals, customs, ideology of the twice born caste, Dvija caste. Now let's look at some of the features of the process of Sanskritization. What are some of the features? First is it leads to upward mobility. Right? Your caste position is this. You emulate the caste position, the rituals, customs of this caste, higher caste. you will move up the caste hierarchy. So there is upward mobility. Is the process immediate, fast? No, it is a slow process. It takes multiple generations. Groups can move their caste position. But note these terms. It is only a positional change. It is not a structural change. Your position in the caste hierarchy has changed, but the entire structure has not changed. It's not that the Brahmins have come, their position has come down. It's not that the Kshatriyas' position has come down. That you have moved up the caste hierarchy maybe, but the entire structure is not changing. It's not getting inverted, right? So it is just a positional change, not a structural change. Economic betterment and political power does not necessarily lead to subsidization. What does it mean? If you look at history, there have been multiple instances where different caste groups have acquired power, economic power, political power. They have become wealthier. They have become powerful. But that does not mean their position in the ritual hierarchy changes. No. So having wealth, acquiring more wealth, becoming affluent, becoming more powerful does not necessarily imply your position in the social hierarchy will change. Your position in the ritual hierarchy will change. Does not necessarily ensure subsidization. Right? So this is something which is interesting. Apart from that, another thing that was observed is it is not just people from the lower caste who are going for subsidization. There can be tribes who can also go for subsidization. Bhils, Gonds, Orans, they have also attempted subsidization. And again, they have also claimed higher caste status. So sometimes tribal communities have also gone for this. Subsidization can also be seen as subsidization can also be viewed from the light of reference group behavior. What is reference group behavior? Paper 1, Robert Merton, he talks about reference groups, right? Reference group behavior implies that one group tries to evaluate itself on the basis of another group, superior group. And then it can follow different steps. So one group will identify a reference group, and on the basis of that reference group, it will try to evaluate itself. So subsidization can also be viewed from that angle. One caste is trying to evaluate itself on the basis of another higher caste maybe. And it is trying to emulate the different kinds of practices of the higher caste. So from that also, from this particular lens also, you can look at it, right? So lower caste members, they are living their own lifestyles, etc., attitudes, etc., and they are emulating a caste which is higher up in the societal hierarchy, ritual hierarchy. A lower caste aspiring to move upwards in the caste hierarchy through the process of subsidization may have to follow hostility from the higher caste, right? It is expected if there is one caste at the top. Now there is some other caste which is claiming that we are also at par with you, or we are almost at the same position. We also should be in the same position. Then there is hostility from other communities, the higher caste maybe. Why? Because no one would want to cede the honor, prestige that they feel that is exclusively reserved for them. Right? So it leads to hostility. So subsidization can lead to different kinds of conflicts, tensions, troubles. So this is how these are different features of the subsidization process. Now, what is the implication of all these things? 2-3 implications. There's an economic implication. Different kinds of activities, services that members from the lower caste that they were providing, right? Caste and job that is linked with one another, right? So those castes which are trying to subsidize, they are also performing different kinds of roles in the society, different kinds of functions in society. They are giving it up and they are trying to take up something else. Right? So those functions will not be carried out. So economics wise, that is the implication. Also, those castes which are trying to be sanskritized, what they will do, they will try to follow the practices of the upper caste, right? Now they will start to have more religious rituals. They will go to temples, etc., etc. They will attend temples regularly. They will wear sacred thread, etc. So religious wise, all these changes are there. And people from lower caste communities are attracted to this because it helps them improve their social standing, right? Because the privilege associated, the honor associated, prestige associated with the higher caste was more. So more members from the lower caste community get attracted towards it. Now the last bits, we have been talking about subsidization. We have been talking about mobility, right? Definitely there is mobility along the ritual hierarchy, caste hierarchy. But is there mobility? Is there social mobility in the sense that has their position completely changed, or has it changed only along the caste hierarchy? Right? Within the society, again you have different access of stratification, right? Wealth, power, prestige. Right? Maybe along that prestige hierarchy, honor hierarchy, position has changed because of subsidization. But overall, has their position changed? What are the gains that they're making? So M.N. Srinivas says that, see, your status is changing, your position is changing, but the entire structure is not changing. Positional change is there, but structural change is not there. Also, subsidization does not necessarily always result in higher status. That also is the case. Sometimes it might result, sometimes it might not. Sometimes other factors also become important. Economic well-being, political power, education, etc. And he points out that members from the Dalit community, for them, subsidization has not worked. Even if they emulate the lifestyles of the upper caste, they will not be given the equal social status. So it's not something which is foolproof. Sometimes it has worked, sometimes it has not. And many other factors are at play. Some other thinkers, they have questioned the entire thing. Right? So they're saying that, okay, the rank position is changing, but the entire structure is not changing. And one of the major criticisms of subsidization is, when you consider subsidization as a way of changing one's position in the hierarchy, you are actually reinforcing caste inequalities. Why is it so? So there is this hierarchy here. Now, if you look at subsidization, or if you are proposing subsidization as a way by which different castes can move up the position in the hierarchy, what you are saying is, this position is better than this position. This position is better than this position. And when you are making these value judgments, indirectly what you are saying is, caste system is fine. You are actually justifying the inequalities that exist in the caste system. So many scholars have actually questioned this entire method of subsidization. So subsidization as a way or as a means to improve your social status might not be correct, because through this, inequalities are being justified further. Caste-based inequalities are being justified further. So I just want to conclude with, I just want to read this particular sentence. To understand caste relations through subsidization is to ignore and invisibilize the existence of a non-caste egalitarian society and the role of anti-caste struggles. We'll come to that. What they mean, what the author wants to say here. If you are looking at caste through the lens of subsidization, if subsidization as a way to improve social status is promoted, so basically what you're trying to promote, you're saying that members who are from the lower caste, they should take up the practices of the higher caste. You're assuming that the practices of the higher caste are good, I mean, good or bad, you are yourself deciding, you're giving the value judgment. And also you're saying, you're trying to justify why a particular caste is high and why a particular caste is low. So indirectly, you are not thinking of a situation where you can possibly have an egalitarian society. You are saying that caste should move along these hierarchies. Instead of saying that, maybe you should say there should be a casteless society. Maybe there should be a non-caste egalitarian society. So subsidization as a means has been questioned. Looking at caste system through subsidization has also been questioned. Another option, how you can address these hierarchies, it is through anti-caste struggles, temple entry movement and all those struggles, where the very basis of caste system is questioned. Right? So anti-caste struggles, they are not looking at these culture, ritual, trajectory. These struggles, they do not focus on imitating some superior caste. Right? They question caste system, the discriminating nature of the caste system. So subsidization is, we assume that through subsidization, certain communities are able to improve their position in the caste hierarchy. But through subsidization, if subsidization is something which is prevalent, the caste hierarchies also remain intact. All the castes which are considered to be lower, they will all try to become better along the caste hierarchy, which again reinforces whatever inequalities that exist. Right? So this is about caste system and some issues related. This is about subsidization and caste system and some of the issues related to subsidization. Right? So there's one term, desubsidization, which is sometimes used. Again, what it implies here is members from the upper caste emulating the practices and other things of the lower caste. For example, Brahmins consuming meat, drinking alcohol, which they were not supposed to do. That is called desubsidization. Again, not very important, but in case if you come across this term, there's a meaning. What do we mean by subsidization? How does subsidization help in social mobility? You can answer it here, but keep in mind, when you talk about subsidization and social mobility, always have a caveat at the end. It might lead to positional change, it is not leading to structural change. And when subsidization as a mechanism for social mobility if it becomes prevalent, caste inequalities are actually being strengthened, right? They're becoming stronger. So this is about subsidization. The last topic, small topic, conceptual topic. What is the view of Marx and Weber when it comes to social stratification? So already I've told you about social stratification, so I don't need to explain that in details. In any society, you will have some form of hierarchy. It can be in terms of wealth, power, whatever. So this is the meaning of social stratification. But Marx and Weber, they have viewed it differently, right? So what is their perspective? We'll come to that. Now, let's try to go one step back, right? How social stratification develops. Also note one thing, this term stratification comes from the word strata. Strata means layer. If you have completed your geography lessons or geology lessons, right, you would have noticed there is this term stratification. There is also this term strata. Earth has multiple layers, Cr, sigma, again within that also crust, mantle, core, all those things are there, right? Different layers are there. So geologists, they come up with this concept of stratification, how you have multiple layers, crust, mantle, core, and within that also Cr, sigma, and multiple, all those things are there. So the same concept is taken up by sociologists to understand society. What they're saying is in society also you have these layers, strata. There is ranking. One is at the top, one is at the bottom, some are in the middle, and among them also there will be ranking. So this is social stratification. Layman's understanding of social stratification is this: a system of ranking individuals or groups within societies. It also refers to society's ranking of its people into socioeconomic tiers based on multiple factors. Upper class, middle class, lower class. Again, within middle class, you will have an upper middle class, middle class, lower middle class. Right? Within upper class also you might have again different variations. So this ranking is nothing but stratification. But how does this stratification happen? Through certain processes. First, differentiation. Differentiation is something which is natural. Any society you go, you'll find differences. You'll find differences in terms of wealth, differences in terms of gender, right? You will find these differences, right? Male, female, third gender, people having different incomes. Some will be having more power, some will be having less power. Right? Differences are always there. So the first thing that happens is differentiation. Second thing is evaluating these differences. If someone is rich, that person might be considered to be superior. If someone is having less wealth, this person can be considered inferior. If someone is having white skin color, that person might be considered superior. If some person is having a dark skin tone, will be considered inferior. Right? Some societies have these racist tendencies also, right? So this is evaluation. This evaluation results in ranking of people. Right? Super rich, someone who is rich, someone who is again having some average amount of wealth, someone who is not having anything, someone is extremely poor. So now there is a ranking which exists. And on the basis of ranking, if society gives rewards, fine, that will happen finally. Rewards are associated on the basis of these rankings. Different kind of privileges are associated with your position in that hierarchy. So this is how social stratification shapes up. Differentiation, evaluation, superiority, inferiority, ranking, and then rewards. So all these things in details are there in the handout. This slide actually explains that, which I already explained. So this is how social stratification looks like. Now, what does Marx tell you about social stratification? How does Karl Marx look at social stratification? Karl Marx says that any society, you will have haves and have-nots. Societies are stratified. You will have haves and have-nots. And how this stratification happens? On the basis of ownership of means of production. Whoever owns the means of production, they are the haves. Those who do not own the means of production, they are the have-nots. Have-nots. Right? So any society, you will have a ruling class, subject class. The ruling class are the haves, the subject class are the have-nots. The ruling class, they own the means of production. The have-nots, the subject class, they are the ones who are working for those who own the means of production. And the ruling class, they control the subject class. They use different institutions for that. And the ruling class also exploits the subject class. Right? This is what happens. And the stratification leads to different kinds of conflict. The ruling class tries to promote its own interest. They will use different institutions for that. Law, religion, family, all these things they will try to use to promote their own interest. But at some point of time, the subject class realizes that they are being taken for granted. And it's something which happens in capitalist society. Capitalist society, the proletariat, develops class consciousness. They develop awareness about their reality, objective reality, subjective awareness about objective reality. They realize that societies are getting polarized. There is homogenization, polarization. Classes will become polarized. At some point of time, there might be 6 classes. But gradually, all these things will lead to 2 classes, bourgeois and proletariat. There will be homogenization. So within the classes, right, within the proletariat, everyone is becoming same. They're all working in the same shop floor. And there is proletarization. That means the share of profits the workers get from their production, it reduces over a period of time. They're becoming poorer. And they develop the subjective awareness of objective reality. and it leads to a revolution. Revolution will change the social structure. It will lead to creation of a classless society, egalitarian society, communist society. So this is what Marx talks about, and he says that at any point of time, except for primitive communism, you have had stratified societies, right? Slaves, masters and slaves, feudal lords and serfs, bourgeois proletariat. And in future, when you have a communist society, at that point of time, again, you will not have any stratification. It will be a classless society. So wealth, those who are owning means by which you can create wealth, forces of production, means of production, on that basis, stratification is happening as per Marx. So Marx also talked about phases where there were maybe more classes in society, 7 classes, 6 classes. In Germany, he talked about a phase where there were 7 classes. But he's saying eventually you will have 2 classes, bourgeois and the proletariat in industrial societies. Weber differs here. Weber says that it is not the case that stratification happens only along one line. Weber says stratification can happen along 3 lines. One is on the basis of wealth, that is called class. Those people who have same position when it comes to their ability to derive rewards from the market, that is called class. So class is group of individuals who have equal ability, who have similar market position, equal ability to draw rewards from the market. So basically wealth. Those who are having similar amount of wealth, they will form class. And then you'll have different people who have different capacity to draw rewards from the market, who will have different market situation. So some will be wealthy, some will not be wealthy, some will be extremely poor, some will be in between. So this is called class-based stratification on your ability to draw rewards from the market. Another way by which societies can be stratified is on the basis of status. How much prestige you command, how much honor is associated with you, how social honor is divided. Caste is an example of that. Some members, certain castes, they are given more honor. Certain castes are given less honor. Certain castes are discriminated against. They are looked down upon. And things like untouchability is practiced against them. Even now, though it is banned by the constitution and our laws. So caste is an example of status-based hierarchy. Another dimension of stratification, power. Some people are powerful, some are not. Some are somewhere in between. A politician is extremely powerful. Within politician also, a prime minister will be extremely powerful. A home minister or defense minister will be extremely powerful. Some other ministers, let's say sports minister, might not be as powerful. A union minister might be more powerful than a state minister. A chief minister might be more powerful than a cabinet minister at the union level. Bureaucrats are powerful. Within the bureaucrats also the levels of power will vary. So on the basis of power also societies can be stratified. So 3 axes on which stratification happens: status, class, and party power similar. Now you might have a question: are they not linked with one another? If someone is wealthy, maybe their status is also good, and maybe they also have power. Yes, sometimes there might be overlap, but not always the case. For example, look at India's social hierarchy or caste-based hierarchy that you have. Brahmins are at the top, but they did not necessarily be most powerful. The Kshatriyas will be more powerful. The Vaishyas might be the most wealthiest. So maybe sometimes it will overlap, sometimes it might not overlap. So example of it overlapping: the Dalit members, right? They're at the bottom when it comes to wealth hierarchy. They're at the bottom when it comes to status hierarchy. They're at the bottom when it comes to power hierarchy. So they're at the bottom when it comes to all these 3 hierarchies. Another thing, Marx said that over a period of time, you'll have 2 classes. Right? Maybe in intermediate phases, you have 6 classes. Eventually, what will happen? Societies will move in such a direction that you will end up with having 2 classes. Polarization will happen. One pole, another pole. One class, another class. One class here, another class here. But that has not happened. You have multiple classes now. Upper class, middle class, so many different classes. So this is where Weber's viewpoint was correct. Marx was wrong in this. Weber had predicted that a large bureaucratic societies will be having proliferation of classes. Marx was saying there will be polarization of classes. Marx had predicted that eventually what will happen? You'll have a revolution. And it will lead to creation of a communist society. This is something which has never happened. We have had conflicts, but they have been resolved. There are different ways by which these conflicts are resolved now. Marx had predicted that at some point of time, private property will be abolished. Again, this is not something which has happened. And Marx had predicted that if private property is abolished, it will lead to creation of a classless society. But that is not the case. You may abolish private property, but inequality in terms of power, inequality in terms of status will continue to exist. And this is something which Gerard Lensky also talks about. So the point is, Marx and Weber, they differ along all these lines. Marx said that only one way stratification takes place: who owns the means of production. And he said that eventually there will be polarization of classes. It will lead, and again there will be a situation where there will be revolution, and it will lead to creation of a communist society. Weber differed from Marx. Weber said stratification happens along multiple axes. You will not have polarization. You will have pluralization of classes, and maybe there will be conflicts, but it will not necessarily get converted into a revolution. And yes, in all these cases, Weber has proved to be correct, not Marx. So this is the difference between Weber and Marx here. Question: compare and contrast Marxian and Weberian perspective on social stratification. So when you have these terms, compare and contrast, right? So keep in mind you have to talk about 2 things. One is you have to talk about the similarities, right, between Marx and Weber. Similarities, both of them have talked about classes, by the way, right? Wealth-related things both have talked about. What is the difference? When it comes to difference, you have to talk about how Weber talked about some more dimensions of stratification, how he talked about pluralization of classes, how he talked about the impossibility or highly unlikely it is going to, you are going to have a revolution. That also you can talk about. So this is about Marx and Weber when it comes to social stratification. And with this, we also conclude our discussion for the day. We'll wrap it up for the day. It's already 11 now. So enjoy whatever is remaining of the weekend. Tomorrow is Sunday. Maybe you have some free time. Take out some time for yourselves. Thank you. We'll wrap it up.